Welcome back, everybody. This is the second video in this series on the rise of industrialization in America. In our first video, we covered the emergence of capitalism out of earlier feudal societies in Europe and covered some key economic concepts that we're going to use throughout this video. So if you didn't watch that first video, I encourage you to go back and take a look at it so that you can follow along here. Now we're going to start off today by coming back across the Atlantic and zooming in on the United States, where we're going to stay for the remainder of this series. And as we do that, I want to touch back on one key vocab term that we covered last week. Now, we first introduced the term bourgeoisie when that social class emerged in the early capitalist period, in the late feudal period, and that term is sometimes mistakenly referred to as the middle class. And although this might have been true when the bourgeoisie emerged because they were in the middle, they were between the peasants and the nobility, this isn't a really fair description of what this term means in an American context. Now remember, in the United States, we didn't have a noble class in the US, so this bourgeois class, the capitalist class of businessmen, merchants, and investors, they were the wealthiest Americans from the start of the country onward. This is the class that led the revolution, like we talked about last week. This is the class that wrote the Constitution and set up the government that we still follow today. And we do need to remember that the government that they created, in many senses, was designed to protect their interests. It enshrined these capitalist ideas of property rights and laissez-faire, of the government kind of staying hands-off of the economy, and this system certainly encouraged a tremendous amount of economic growth in the United States, but again, this growth often came at great human cost. Now, we're about 2 minutes into the second video on this series about industrialization, and you may have noticed that we haven't even really talked about industrialization yet. That's okay, we're going to hit it now. Now, when we talk about industrialization, we're essentially talking about technology that uses machine power to accomplish tasks. And humans have been using some form of machine power or another for literally thousands of years. You can look at windmills that use the power of the wind to turn a sail, which then turns a stone and grinds grain. We talked about water wheels earlier in the year, where people would basically stick a wheel in a river, and the flow of the river would turn the wheel, which could turn a saw or turn a mill of some kind. And any way that humans could use power from some other source, whether it was the wind or the river, was great because that's less energy that individual humans have to provide using their muscles. That way we can save our muscles for the gym and let other energy sources do our work for us. That sounds good to me. Now, what really rapidly expands the use of industry beyond windmills and sawmills using water wheels is the advent of the steam engine. And this isn't a science class, we don't have to get too deep into it, but basically how a steam engine works is you have a container of water, you apply heat to that water, and then once it boils, the steam that comes out expands, and we can use that physical process of the expansion of steam to turn a wheel or power a piston. And now with the advent of these machines, factories didn't have to be built next to a river anymore. You could build a factory anywhere, as long as you have ready access to combustible fuel. And initially, humans tended to use wood for this purpose, and over the course of just the first few decades of the Industrial Revolution, millions of acres of forests were felled to fuel this growth in industry. Later on, we turned to the use of coal and oil, but as we know, those have other consequences that we are still dealing with in our environment today. Although other European countries got a head start on industrialization, places like England and Germany, the United States really takes off with a bang and grows into one of the leading industrial powers in the world due to three crucial ingredients for the growth of industrialization: cheap raw materials, cheap labor, and capitalist investment. And we can track this growth of industrialization in the United States in the 1800s through its biggest and most infamous industry, cotton. The cotton industry was truly the engine of the American economy up through the middle 1800s. In fact, by 1860, when the Civil War began, about 60% of everything that the United States exported was cotton. And the reason American cotton was so popular is because it was cheap and high quality. American textiles were so cheap because the raw cotton being produced in the southern states was driven by slave labor. And that kept costs low, obviously, because they weren't paying the people doing the actual work. This raw cotton was then sent up to northern factories and workshops where it was spun into usable cloths using advanced machines. The American capitalist class was ahead of the curve in terms of investing in the leading technology for efficient weaving of raw cotton into textiles. And these northern textile factories were operated by workers receiving extraordinarily low wages. These workers were often immigrants, many of whom were coming from famine-stricken Ireland and were existing in really horrible conditions for extremely low wages, which, as we'll see, is a trend throughout the industrial period, both in the United States and elsewhere. And one last note on the role of slavery in the growth of American capitalism. The Civil War was fought over the issue of slavery, and the North's victory did lead to abolition of slavery in the United States. And it is true that many Northern soldiers joined the war to try to end this practice of slavery, which they saw as deeply evil. But not every Northerner was an abolitionist. Northern industry was dependent upon and deeply invested in Southern slavery. And even in the New England states, where many people were personally opposed to slavery on a moral level, there were millions and millions of dollars spent investing in the expansion of slavery in the South. I mean, that's pretty hypocritical, right? To say you're opposed to something in public and then turn around and make money off it on the side. Good thing nothing like that ever happens in today's economy, right? Oh, hold on one second. We have an ad break.
This video is brought to you by ExxonMobil, Halliburton, and Purdue Pharmaceuticals.
All right, let's get back to the history. Northern industrialists knew that their profits depended upon cheap raw cotton coming in from the southern states. And many Northerners opposed the abolition of slavery even after the Emancipation Proclamation, either out of their own racism or out of their own business interests. And besides, the capitalist theory of laissez-faire said that the government shouldn't interfere with economic matters. And if you asked Southern planters, slavery wasn't a moral matter, but an economic one. And the government had no right to deprive them of their quote-unquote property rights, even when that property was humans. I'm reminded of the words of Oliver Ellsworth, who was one of the guys who wrote the Constitution and later became a Supreme Court justice. Now, Ellsworth is from Connecticut, which is a state that doesn't have slavery. He's a very religious guy, and he personally believes that slavery is morally wrong. But when the issue of the slave trade comes up in the Constitutional Convention, he says, "Let every state import what it pleases. The morality or wisdom of the slavery are considerations belonging to the states themselves. What enriches a part enriches the whole." And I think this is very interesting because he comes in first by saying that, well, that's up to the states. The government, the federal government can't decide whether or not to outlaw slavery. That's not the government's business. And then at the end, he kind of shoehorns in there, what enriches the part enriches the whole. Southern slavery and Northern industry were completely intertwined. And even after the abolition of slavery following the Civil War, the institution of Jim Crow laws and a sharecropping system in the South basically maintained the influx of cheap cotton to northern textile mills. But by the late 1800s, this massive accumulation of investment capital wasn't just focused on textiles, but was branching out into dozens of new industries opened up by new technology and new resources throughout the country. This set the stage for the rise of corporations and the Gilded Age, which we'll cover next time. See you then. Take care.